That's the real fear. Make no mistake, because that would require every politician, Democrat or Republican alike, to actually do right by their constituents. They are not afraid. The real fear is Zohran will be successful. And then that will require them to actually go against the interests of capital. This is awesome. Survivor of Mao regime calls out Mamdani voters. They don't know history.
Socialism and communism. New Hampshire congressional candidate Lily Tong Williams and Manhattan Institute fellow Daniel DiMartino. Great to see both of you. Lily, what do you say to Zohran Mamdani, who is the Democrat now running for the mayor here? Or what do you say to people who vote for socialism?
Well, the people who vote for socialism are the ones who never lived it, who never suffered from the hunger and poverty and the lack of freedom and police state. So those people should.
That got to be deliberate. Mamdani? That's the craziest version I've heard thus far. Like, I get it. Americans can't say ethnic names, okay? I get it. But goddamn, dude, Mamdani?
Should be educated about history better. That's failure of our American education system. Our kids don't know the history, and they bought into free stuff provided by government. That's how Mao sold the socialism, communism to millions Chinese, and the millions of them starving to death by his central planning socialist policies. So I'm running because I don't.
Yeah, dude, China's doing so poorly. Why couldn't they remain under the banner of nationalist forces and, you know, depending on how things went, possibly become a vassal state of England or America and continue the century of humiliation? Really up.
I don't want this country become the country I left. And I don't want anybody to take away my gun rights. That's a God-given rights. I will never compromise.
I love it. Well, Daniel, I want to ask you something that I'm really perplexed about, and it's not only young people that are gravitating towards the AOCs and the Mamdanis of the Democrat Party, but I'm rather perplexed and confused why white, I call them overly educated liberals, when you look at the breakdown of this Democrat mayor.
Overly educated? Overly educated. Okay. That's cool. I guess we're just, I mean, this is the type of shit that, like, I get annoyed when liberals participate in this, where it's like now they're just wearing it like a badge of courage and honor.
Mayoral primary in New York City this week. You're not necessarily seeing the working class. You're not seeing black voters, Hispanic voters. You're not seeing them.
What? Fox News made fun of Joe Biden for a year. Fox News never stopped making fun of the Democrats for saying this same thing. She's like, a real working class movement has, you know, stupid people like black people and Hispanic people. Not the overly educated white liberals. You're a Republican. What are you saying right now? This is no different than Joe Biden being like, you know, if you don't vote for me, you're not black.
Them showing out necessarily for Mamdani, but you're seeing the white liberals, and those are the ones that were celebrating, cheering up and down for him. You gotta help me understand, what is it about that group of people that makes them cheer so ferociously for socialism?
Yeah, thank you all, and thank you for having me. Good to see you all again. Look, what really concerns me about this is what you said, Tommy, that it is really highly educated young people who turned out for Mamdani. And it is really not shocking because I went to Columbia for my PhD and I saw it myself. People there are the most supportive of socialism. And the reason is because of our colleges here in America. That was one of the most shocking things I saw when I first came to America.
That's amazing. This guy's awesome. I was not expecting this voice. Is he Venezuelan? No. I mean, his last name is DiMartino, so I assume he's Italian, right?
In 2016 was that it was higher education that was captured by Marxists. And so what happened in Venezuela, that people voted for a socialist regime, unlike in China or unlike in the Soviet Union, can clearly happen here too. And Mamdani might not be able to turn New York City into Caracas because he's mayor and not tyrant, but...
Bro, they don't call me the hog whisperer for no reason, bitch. Oh, what happened now? Chatters were like, you did not say he's Venezuelan. Yeah, bitch, I did. Okay? I did. Because I know my hogs, bro. I know my international hogs. You feel me? Don't test me, bro. Don't test me. I got the hog radar on lock. I know my international hogs.
The point is, Americans are willing to vote for someone like him. And today is New York City, tomorrow is the rest of America.
Well, his campaign, he's the child of a famous film director, and his campaign is definitely kind of social media managed. It has that kind of film of like a filter over it. He always tilts his head to seem more endearing when he's on camera. Daniel, doesn't that have something to do with it?
I think he's extremely charismatic, and that's why he's extremely dangerous. I think he lies even when he smiles. I mean, I have very strong opinions about him. His middle name is actually after the dictator of Ghana, not some civil rights leader, but somebody who was named president for life. And so he's friends with the Democratic Socialists of America. That's who trained him. This is an organization that regularly sends people to meet with the dictators of Cuba and Venezuela. He does not want to make New York City into Scandinavia. He wants to make us into Venezuela. The question is whether we will let him. It's whether Americans will let these socialist ideas take over.
Lily, I know that you have fled horrible conditions, and so many immigrants like yourself, they're saying the same thing that you are. Listen, don't make America like the place that I fled from. Now, this is New York City. Obviously, it's deep blue. How concerned are you that other places, maybe not as deep blue as New York City, are going to follow this example? And do you think this is going to be the way that the Democrat Party trends?
Yes, I have seen the radical left wing of Democrat Party took over their voter bases, and that's one of the tactics they use. They use cultural Marxism, identity politics to divide and conquer. They control the media, social media, and schools, and cultural institutions, like take over some churches and nuclear families, and get the kids against their parents and walk away to authority figures. Those are very similar to what I saw under Mao's Cultural Revolution. That's why I'm warning people that we don't want to go down that way, because they sell you free stuff to get you buy into it. Once they totally disarm you and silence you and install police state.
I can't think of a bigger, more shameful experience than being a Chinese person who Mao played a formative role in educating and uplifting, only to turn around and just bark for the most right-wing racist interest in this country. What a shame. Actual shame.
State destabilize our country, then you will lose all your natural rights guaranteed by the founding fathers in the documentation called the independence, our Constitution.
Lily Tong Williams. And
I was talking to a Persian person I know, and she was saying, oh, my parents, like, they hate communism. My Iranian parents hate communism because they say they were like, some of them were killed by communists. And I was like, what do you mean? And she explained the detail. She explained in detail like what happened. And it turns out that she had immediate family members that were actually Iranian communists, and they fled to Azerbaijan when the Shah came into power. It's the same thing. It's always the same shit. It's like Ted Cruz being like, oh, I hate communism. My parents were tortured by communists. I mean, they were tortured by Batista. It's like, dude, that's not, what are you talking about? Like, I know you are relying. I know you're relying on the average American not to know, but like, you can't jot that as a victim of communism if your parents ran away from the guy that the communists actually toppled, the American-backed dictator, Batista.
Daniel DiMartino, great to see both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
While many on the left are rejoicing in Democrat socialist Zohran Mamdani's success in New York City mayoral primary, some Democrats are speaking out against his proposals. Among them is New York Congresswoman Laura Gillen, who says Mamdani is too extreme to lead the city, and she joins us now. So great to see you, Congresswoman. Thank you for joining us. So this really is, first of all, were you shocked by the outcome of this?
I was pretty surprised, yes.
Why?
Well, I just didn't think that New York would elect someone who's a self-proclaimed socialist to lead the city that is the global epicenter of capitalism. So I was very surprised, and I spoke out because first of all, my job is to advocate for my constituents. I'm gravely concerned that if he became mayor and implemented some of these policies, we're going to see an exodus from New York. It's going to crater our economy. It's going to drive up taxes that will be passed on to my constituents. And it will destroy our state's economy as well. He ran a campaign based on a bunch of promises that...
So what happens when that doesn't happen? I mean, that's the real fear here, by the way, chatters. The real fear for people like this is not that, you know, what they're fantasizing is going to happen. The real fear is that Zohran wins and it doesn't happen. And then the people go, why can't we have that? That's the real fear. Make no mistake, because that would require every politician, Democrat or Republican alike, to actually do right by their constituents. They are not afraid that Zohran is going to lead to an exodus of capital from New York City and New York State. They know that that is not the case. They know that that's not going to happen. The real fear is that it won't happen and Zohran will be successful. And then that will require them to actually go against the interests of capital. And their positions rely on them not going against the interests of capital, but instead defending the interests of capital, as is what she's doing right now.
He cannot deliver on. Right. He doesn't have the legal authority to do half the things that he said he's going to do. You know, it shows that he either misrepresented what he can do to the constituents of this city, or he doesn't have a fundamental understanding of what the role of mayor is. You cannot raise taxes if you are the mayor of New York City. He sits in the state assembly. He should know.
Wait, why are you worried then? I don't get it. Okay, so he's making a lot of promises and he's not going to be able to capitalize on it. Then why are you worried? Why would that lead to an exodus then? I don't get it. So nothing will change?
That. And the governor has already signaled that she is not going to approve this tax hike that he is proposing. He doesn't have the authority to do that.
Or even a fundamental understanding of how life works. I want to play this because I think it captures... This is not a casual socialist like, you know, some 18-year-old talking about stuff. He's actually thought about this stuff, and he's a true socialist. And let's play this clip real quick, and then I want to get your reaction.
You're a proud democratic socialist. Do you think that is a platform that would work for other candidates running in other parts of the country?
Absolutely. I think ultimately this is a campaign about inequality. And you don't have to live in the most expensive city in the country to have experienced that inequality because it's a national issue. And part of how we got to this point was through the endorsements of Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders, who've been leading this fight against oligarchy across the country.
And you can hear him talking about wanting to rework the way distribution of wealth is done, as if that happens through the government and the government is going to create a grocery store. And
if that's not how it's done, or if that can't happen, why are you worried? It's not up to the government to offer social safety nets. What are you, stupid? What is this, communist vuvuzela? What are you, out of your freaking mind?
It's kind of bonkers.
Listen, he addressed the cost of living crisis.
Right.
We are facing a cost of living crisis. But the way forward for Americans and the way forward for my party is to find concrete solutions, to find ways to lower the cost of living for everyday Americans and not promise to be Santa Claus and give everything for free when you can't.
Wait. Okay, that's what he's doing. We need to find a way to cut the cost for everyday Americans. No, not like that. It seems like you want to actually cut the costs for everyday Americans, and I don't like that.
Can't actually do that because nothing is free. Everything has a price tag attached to it. So what I'm focused on is finding a way forward, and I think the vision for my party is reclaiming our voice in the middle, working across the aisle to find concrete solutions to lower costs and make Americans' lives safer and better.
Well, I'm so grateful for you coming on today, and I'm glad you're fighting this fight. And I hope you find other Democrats who join the sanity caucus within the Democrat Party, because we cannot have an insane party.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart.
Ask you to end quickly by talking about Zohran Mamdani and just to bring the conversation to a full circle and just taking a look at how much of a threat he is perceived by a lot of people in the political class in the U.S. and as well as in the media, because he's been attacked from every angle over the last couple of days, and the attacks are vicious, and I think it betrays a sense that a lot of people feel threatened by what he represents and what the generation that has voted him in potentially represents. And I wonder what you think about that.
Well, that's a large question, and I don't have the time to go through it in the detail that it warrants. I would say that Mamdani, he represents almost in a pure form the class struggle. You know, the famous line by Karl Marx in the beginning of the Communist Manifesto, the first line is, "The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles." The history of all hitherto existing societies is the history of class struggles. And we're seeing in the Mamdani campaign, it's clearing the air. If you remember when the Bernie Sanders challenge to the existing system emerged, it got the powers that be tried to confuse the stakes. So all of these woke people, they started to criticize Bernie for being weak on the black question, weak on racism, weak on reparations, weak on the women question. They said Bernie bros. That was how they called it. That was all men, all white men. Of course, Bernie's campaign was all about the class struggle. Every night when he came out, it was attacking the billionaire class. It was attacking Goldman Sachs. It was attacking big pharma. But both the Republican and the Democratic Party both tried to obscure what was going on by turning it into an identity politics struggle. So the Republicans represented the oppressed white working class who are being oppressed by identity politics, you know, and affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion. And the Democratic Party tried to turn it into also an identity politics campaign. We represent Black people.
Yes, I know. The Gaza doc that BBC refused to air, Zeteo is going to host it. I know. I saw.
Mexican, Hispanic people, sexual minorities. So each of them pretended, they wanted to obscure the real issue. The real issue was a class struggle. And Bernie was very emphatic about it.
Yeah, the left shot itself in the foot with the identity politics push in 2016 and 2020. Guys, this conversation can quickly turn reactionary. The problem with the Democratic Party is not that they care about gay people, trans people, black people, whatever. The problem with the Democratic Party is that they don't care about these groups, and they simply use these groups cynically as a defense mechanism to attack both the Republican Party, which also doesn't care about these groups and actively will campaign on not caring about these groups, but more importantly, against their left flank. Okay? This kind of cynical weaponization of identity politics is gross, and people recognize it as fake and phony. It is no different than what Target does every Pride Month, except for this past one. Notice how none of these corporations that normally would do Pride Month shit are not doing it now. I wonder why. Okay? People understand when you're just, being a phony, when you're faking it, when you're just being a fake ally, okay? And simply using it as a way to push out actually progressive left-wing candidates. If someone genuinely cares about these groups, then that's great. I don't think you should cast aside defending these groups at all. I certainly don't. And the Democrats shouldn't either. The problem is that is supposed to be a position that you arrive at, or a position that you convince people on after you have garnered support with policies that most Americans, the overwhelming majority of Americans, can recognize will help them. And you have to be able to earnestly communicate that you are in favor of these policies, which is precisely why you have to apply the principle of universality to these positions. You have to have class first politics. I have never strayed away from this position. Okay? Class reductionism is an issue in this community. Please stop. No, there is no real class reductionism. Okay? Unless someone is antagonistic to marginalized populations and simply only care about like class first politics, even then it's still better than what the Democrats are doing, where they fake claim that they care about fucking, in the words of Norm Finkelstein, sexual minorities. Okay? Class first politics is still better than what the Democrats are doing. Okay? But even then, the class reductionism attitude is so stupid. Unless someone is antagonistic to marginalized communities, class first politics is not a bad thing. It is the best method. Okay? I noticed after the FD Signifier election analysis video was dropped, I don't even know if FD Signifier would agree with a lot of his assessments from that video that came immediately after the election. I had my criticisms of that as well. I have always told you that the best possible way to go about this is what Zohran did and what I try to do as well, which is to make an argument that you want Medicare for all, healthcare for every single person, unconditionally, right? And then when people go, well, does that mean trans people get healthcare too? You say, yes, of course they get healthcare too. Do you not want the free healthcare? If someone is that transphobic that they will say, no, I don't want free healthcare if trans people are going to get it, then, good luck. That person is probably not convincible. But you can convince a lot of people that are in the margins that don't necessarily care about trans people all that much, but certainly care about their own personal living conditions, their own standards improving. That is how you're supposed to do it. You are wrong. It's dangerous to bring the right to exist of other people to the forefront of politics. What? You guys are misunderstanding this. Chatters with neoliberal latent thought can't conceptualize the difference between politics and policy. Yes. One of the things that angered me all the time with with both of Bernie's campaigns was how much the Democrats hammered him on, like, how racist he is. Bernie's racist. Why? Because he doesn't speak enough about black issues. And what they were doing was unironically racist, because every time Bernie talks about alleviating poverty, he's talking about black issues too. Okay? But for the Democratic Party, the only way that they think you can communicate to black people is by directly talking about criminal justice reform, which was also a primary part of Bernie's campaigning as well. But it's ridiculous how unironically racist and cynical this kind of pandering is. Like, you think all black people, the only thing that black people care about is criminal justice reform? What the fuck are we doing? Of course that's important. And of course that's a policy that should be discussed. But you think black people don't experience issues with lack of access to health care? When Bernie says, I want Medicare for all, that's also for black people. As a matter of fact, for black and brown people, it's even more significant because they live in underserved communities. If they have a higher likelihood of being in the grips of poverty, those kinds of universal policies unironically end up helping black and brown communities even more. That's it. I've said this before, where if you don't first make an argument that is broad, if you don't first come up with policies that are class-based, you are going to keep losing. Because even violence at the systematic level, like the structural violence that people experience, like poverty, the systematic violence that people experience, they experience on the class level. This is precisely the reason why in the United States of America, while a black person, no matter how wealthy they are, can experience racism, obviously the condition of a black woman like Oprah is far better than a white homeless person. That's class. Okay? That's class. And there was a point in time in American history where a white homeless person would not trade places with the wealthiest black person, for sure. But that's not the case any longer. This doesn't mean that black people, or this doesn't mean that like racism doesn't exist anymore. Systemic racism is still very much a major part of how people experience how people experience it in their day-to-day, okay, in their normal existence. Okay? So a white homeless person can have better health than a black person? Wait, what? Politics, huh? So a white homeless person can have a better health than a black person? What? Black people in this day and age that experience systematic racism, okay, are still experiencing it from the perspective of class violence. Aside from the stigmas that still exist, aside from stereotypes and stigma and all this other all of these other like systematic forms of oppression that lead to a distorted outcome for black people in like the criminal justice system, for example. Black people and white people consume drugs at the same rate. Black people go to prison. Black people have a higher likelihood of going to prison or being stopped at a police stop and actually receiving longer penalties than white people do for the same exact crimes, okay? This kind of stuff is still also still a form of class violence, okay? It is impossible to separate class from race. That's it. You always have to start off with a class first attitude. You always have to start off with a class first statement, or with a class first position. Intersectionality starts with class. This doesn't mean that you turn a blind eye to systemic forms of discrimination. Of course not. But class is at the root of this.
That. Now with Mamdani, that sort of identity politics is not going to stick with him. You can't say a fellow named Mamdani is weak on race questions, ethnic questions, religious questions. It's not going to work.
This is where Norm is wrong. They have said that, and they started doing that, but Cuomo lost. One very cynical way that the Democrats do this is they'll weaponize the black boomers, okay? They will quite literally say, oh, well, black people are voting for this person. Black people want this person. So you must be racist if you don't. They literally did this with Joe Biden. If you remember, they did this with Joe Biden when people were like, hey, Joe Biden, you need to drop out. You're too old. The media was like, oh, y'all gonna learn today. Black people want Joe Biden. You must be racist for wanting someone else to be running for president as opposed to Joe Biden. This is hysterical from a union that endorsed Andrew Cuomo. It means that their enthusiasm for Cuomo was not even lukewarm. They said it was racist even when people were saying replace him with Kamala. Yeah. 100%. It's insane, dude. That is like, that I think was the most transparent pandering and the most cynical attempts at identity politics that I had seen from the Democratic Party. But that is practically exactly how, that is its practical application. That is the only thing the Democrats care about. Okay? They have a turnout machine and a very loyal base of support within especially older black populations, especially black women, and they will literally throw that in your face, or they'll be like, excuse me, you must be exhibiting misogynoir. That is a byproduct. Isn't this guy Hindu phobic? That's amazing. Why? Because he said what he said about Modi in Gujarat. Is that what you think? That was one of the funniest things I heard too. People were like, I can't believe he said that about Modi. Wasn't Modi not allowed in the United States of America for an extended period of time until recently? Why was that the case? Yeah. Modi was banned from the U.S. for a decade by the U.S. government for the same reason Zohran doesn't like him. But if Zohran says he won't meet with him, it can only be due to a blood feud. That's proof of his foreign ethnic attachments. This dipshit Roman helmet guy says, I don't understand. Why does a New Yorker have a blood feud against Modi? Zohran Mamdani, the first potential South Asian mayor of New York, called India Prime Minister Modi as a butcher of Gujarat. When asked if he would meet with Modi if Modi's in New York, Zohran said he would never meet Modi. He literally said, it's because of his foreign ethnic attachments. My father, his family's from Gujarat, and his family is Muslim. I'm Muslim. And Narendra Modi helped orchestrate a mass slaughter of Muslims in Gujarat. Is that not enough proof for you? You might think it's valid that he feels this way because of his foreign ethnic attachments, but pretending like he doesn't have any is just silly. No, he said his ancestry didn't play any role. But the video disproves your point. He brings up his ancestry to provide some authority for his claim about Modi, not to explain it. That's why at the end, he says we should treat Modi like Netanyahu adopting an impersonal legal frame of criminality, which was the same as the U.S. government's when it banned him. But hey, he's a Muslim Indian guy from Uganda. So obviously he can't actually have this opinion on the basis of humanity, on the basis of like people's actions or whatever. He must actually have deep ethnic tensions and deep ethnic resentment.
President Narendra Modi, and this will go to you first. Come on, Narendra
of
India.
I remember this. It was funny.
I was supposed to get Netanyahu, and he was supposed to get Modi. Didn't you even get the memo?
You all get all of them. So
Modi is holding a rally in Madison Square Garden. He wants to hold a joint press conference with you afterwards, reaffirming the strong bond between India and New York. Do you agree to the event?
No.
All right, Mr. Stringer?
No.
And Mr. Mamdani?
No, and I just want to say something here, which is that my father, his family comes from Gujarat in India, and his family is Muslim, I'm Muslim. And Narendra Modi helped to orchestrate what was a mass slaughter of Muslims in Gujarat to the extent that we don't even believe there are Gujarati Muslims anymore. And when I tell someone that I am, it's a shock to them that is even the case. And this is someone who we should view in the same manner that we do Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a war criminal.
And speaking...
Yeah, it seems like the white guys were also saying no. I guess they also have deep ethnic blood feuds. Roman helmet guy. Roman helmet guy being butthurt over Hindu issues. Another Indian lawbreaker is a white national. No, that's a real TikToker. Roman helmet guy is a real TikToker that I thought he's a white guy. I thought that he was like a little sus. I have seen some of his videos in the past. But because he was like Roman helmet guy, I thought he was obviously sus. He's not like a Uttar Pradesh Andy. This is a real white dude. He's on TikTok. Calm down, everybody. Not every white nationalist on Twitter is not every white nationalist, white supremacist on Twitter is a Indian dude, okay? No, this dude is a real person. Like, this dude is a genuine white nationalist as opposed to an Indian guy presenting himself as a white nationalist in the West. Anyway, is obsession with Roma a definitive sign of white nationalism? Not always, but in his case, it proved to be true. I had only seen some of his videos, and I thought I'd only seen some of his videos, and I thought he was a little suspicious, but I didn't realize like how bad it was.
Joining me now, Tomi Lahren, Fox News contributor, host of the Tomi Lahren is Fearless show. Clay Travis.
When someone says they're fearless, like when a Republican commentator says they're fearless or position themselves as fearless, is so funny because it's like everything you do is about how afraid you are of normal things. Like Tomi Lahren is going to now, Tomi Lahren of the Fearless podcast or whatever, is now going to tell you how fearful she is by free buses. Okay? I don't think you should call yourself fearless if you are going on Fox News to talk about how fearful you are of a pilot program where there will be at least one pilot grocery program that is run by the state of New York.
Travis, Fox News contributor and host of Outkick and the Outkick show, and Mark Simone, WOR.
Dude, it's kind of crazy how Tomi Lahren was on a goddamn rocket ship when I first encountered her racist ramblings. A lot of people don't know, but I made my name initially. Oh my God, what is this hair? What the I made a name for myself by like actively going after Tomi Lahren's videos and dissecting them piece by piece. That was when I first went viral in like 2016, 2017. That was my first career move. A lot of OG fans remember that probably and know me from that back in the Facebook days. And look at her career now and look at mine.
Radio Hall of Famer. Thanks for everybody. So Tomi, am I being too hard on this guy?
No, I think you're actually going too easy on him,
No.
Larry. I think you could have gone a little bit harder. Listen, this guy is a huge problem. If New York City chooses to go this way, well, get ready, Nashville, Tennessee, get ready, state of Florida, because everyone's coming. And we welcome you. Please just don't vote for liberals if you come to our great red states. It also shows that as blue cities get more insane, red states are just going to get redder. I'm actually even more concerned, though, because if you look at the people who are voting for this guy, it's not the people that he proclaims to want to uplift. It's really white, overly educated liberals. And the fact that our academic institutions, supposedly the best in the nation, best in the world, are pumping out these kind of anti-everything militants, really, is really disturbing. That's what it's come to? Socialism good, anti-Semitism good, globalize the Antifada, a mainstream concept? That frightens me. Gen Z is lost, Gen Alpha maybe even more
Hell yeah.
lost.
Well, we'll have to see. Clay, bring in here. Is this the future of the Democratic Party, by the way? I mean, AOC campaigned heavily for this guy. So did Bernie Sanders, or at least he spoke for him. AOC was on the campaign trail. Is this where Democrats are actually going?
Let me say this as we start the show. Congrats to everybody who kept their head. Because I think the last time I was on with you, people were losing their minds over the stock market. You got a new record high close in the S&P 500, which is a sign that the economy is actually working and the underpinning of our economy.
I guess the stock market's not as fearful of Zohran then, huh? Huh. Interesting way to undermine the point that Tommy Lauren was making just now. Strange. It's just like, because if Zohran is this like radical revolutionary figure that's going to assassinate, decapitate Wall Street leadership, I suspect that the market would move in that direction, right? So what's up?
Still remains capitalism, which is something that Democrats really don't respect anymore. And here is where I actually welcome Mamdani, because what it represents is a real debate of ideas. When he was on CNN, I believe last night, he was asked whether he believes in capitalism, and he said no. And I think that's the real argument we need to have. And one of the only flaws I think that may exist for capitalism is it provides so much wealth and leisure for everyone that you can start to believe that maybe capitalism isn't the reason you have the wealth and leisure to be attacking it. And so, look.
My favorite thing is when these guys also talk about the recovery of the stock market. It's like, huh, what happened? Because in order for there to be a recovery, there had to be a fall, right? What was that? What was that? What happened really? Classic Trump trope. Breaks something and then picks up the pieces after and basically stops continuously breaking that same thing. And then everybody celebrates him for no longer continuing to break said thing. Well, okay. It would have been better if he didn't break it at all. What the f-? It literally is the exact same thing that happened with Iran. Why did the United States of America spend hundreds of millions of dollars launching this insane campaign and possibly even $1 billion in defending Israel in the process, instead of just telling Israel to not bomb Iran? None of those things had to happen. 600 plus Iranians dead, 30 Israelis dead, thousands wounded in Iran, hundreds wounded in Israel. None of that needed to happen. Literally, all Trump needed to do was go, hey, Israel, I know you want to strike Iran real bad, but don't do that. He did it. He actually told Israel to turn the planes around successfully, mind you, because that's how much power he has, that the Israeli Air Force could literally fire up their jets and fly in the direction of Iran, only to have Donald Trump turn them shits around mid-air. That happened after the ceasefire, of course. My question is, why didn't that happen before the ceasefire? You know?
Democrats recognize that Bernie Sanders might play well in Vermont. He might play well in New York City and LA and Chicago and all these big cities that have elected awful mayors. But it doesn't play very well in the rest of the country. And I think we need to get AOC on the ballot nationwide. I think we need to get, if Bernie Sanders wasn't 83, him on the ballot. And allow these rigorous debates to actually take place, because I think Americans understand capitalism is the answer, not the...
These guys only say this shit because they know the Democrats will never allow it to happen. Because if the Democrats actually allowed that to happen, they would never lose a election ever again. I wonder which one of these two messages is actually going to work. Fake phony posturing towards social safety nets, or a guy who has dedicated his entire 700-year political career to advancing Americans' material conditions and expanding the pre-existing social safety nets. I wonder which message would be better. Republicans can only say this kind of thing knowing full well that the Democrats will never allow it to happen.
But I think a lot of Democrats don't. And that is why they have this internal civil war in their party, which is represented by Cuomo against Mamdani. Mamdani won. I encourage him to represent more of the AOC view. Maybe AOC herself on the ballot in 2028. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, well, I have made the same similarly cynical.
Considering their reaction to Mamdani's Democratic victory, I don't think they want this. I'm getting a feeling that they don't actually want this, because if the Democratic wishes of the population meant more Zohran Mamdani's winning, I think they would probably kill themselves. Hasan, what's your views on Israel? One of the worst countries on the planet. Shouldn't exist. Doesn't have a right to exist. Dismantle it and rebuild it for giving equal rights and equal representation to everyone living there, including the Palestinians that have been pushed away. A right to return. How's that for an answer? You like that one? Yeah, is Israel more like isn't real? And the people that are too racist to like live side by side with equal rights for Palestinians can themselves.
Comments myself, but here in New York, Mark Simone, this is the largest Jewish population on the globe outside of Israel. They're going to vote for this guy, for this, I call him Zorro because I could ever pronounce his name. They're going to really vote for him? Is this serious? Is he going to be mayor?
See, they're not mad at Zohran. They're also mad at democracy, okay? They're mad at the democratic wishes of the majority population being addressed. Also, I get not being able to say Mamdani to a certain degree, but Zohran, come on, man, just say Zohran. Like, what? That's not that difficult to say. Him going, I don't know how to say that. I say Zorro. That is crazy. But once again, every single time they try to hit Zohran, they end up making him look cooler. That's an even cooler nickname, dude. How is this possible? How is it possible that every time they try to make him look worse, they end up making him look cooler? Zorro sounds awesome.
No, he's not going to be mayor. I think you said it. He peaked.
You say Zohran wrong. Bernie pronounced it better than you. Yes, I know it's Zohran Kwame Mamdani. Okay, I know. Zohran. Okay, Zohran.
On Tuesday when he won the primary.
That's still my view.
Yeah, he's not going to go anyplace. Once you start taking a look at it, they've heard about this anti-Semitism. Once you see the tweets, once you see the old video, it's frightening. You know, also...
Bro, what's frightening is what you thought you could pull off with this hairpiece. What's frightening is that there are probably 10,000 Americans that tune into your radio show, not realizing that the decision-making process that you have is so busted that you put that hairpiece on thinking no one would notice. Okay? I'm sorry. That's ridiculous.
So if you hate rich people, okay, but this is what we do in New York. It's a city of Wall Street, of hedge funds, big corporations. It's one of our main industries. It's like, if you want to hate cars, great, but you can't be mayor of Detroit. If you hate big business, you can't be mayor of New York. He's got nowhere to go but downhill.
You know, that's it. Just on that point, I'm going to come back to you, Tom, but hang on. Just on that point, I interviewed Eric Adams yesterday on the show, and he made some really important economic points. Now, I know his performance is a very mixed bag, although I think he's improving for time, but whatever.
Yeah, he's improved. Since the Trump administration basically dangled his pre-existing Department of Justice prosecution over his head, I've begun to like him more and more. Dude, remember all the people that said, oh, the New York mayoral race is not that significant. The New York mayoral race is not that significant. Look at how much one Democratic primary victory has whipped up panic. These guys they're losing their minds. Bro, they're literally about to have a aneurysm. Zorro, legitimately an old school boomer era hero.
Small.
Yeah, I mean, literally, Chuck Schumer almost died. After congratulating Zohran, Chuck Schumer was hospitalized. That is not even a joke. That literally happened. Maybe the events were not related to one another, but in my headcanon, considering that there was no window of time between Chuck Schumer tweeting out a congratulatory tweet on Zohran and then him being hospitalized, I'm afraid I have to assume that those two events are absolutely related. He tried to kill him because of all the anti-Semitism. Yeah, that's what happened. Zohran is so anti-Semitic that his aura, his mere presence as this anti-Semite was enough for Chuck Schumer to almost die.
Real estate, buildings that are rented out, okay, little brownstones and little homes, little small apartment buildings in, Brooklyn or the Bronx. Those people who are not rich, okay, I'm going to leave color out of it. I'm just going to say they're not rich, would get hammered by this guy's policies. In other words, he's no friend of the minorities. He's no friend of the poor or the low-income people. That's why I think he can't win.
No, all these policies backfire. You should always remember that if you're a Democrat. They decided nobody has to pay the broker's fee if they rent an apartment. Landlord has to pay it. Mm-hmm. Instantly, the price of every apartment went up 15% to cover that. So it backfires on the people. It never works.
So he wants to defund the police. Okay, let's just start. This is like a repeat of the Summer of Love, right? Fires burning up in Minneapolis, in Portland, in Seattle, and elsewhere. Here too, I do not understand how New Yorkers can vote for someone who wants to defund the police. I don't understand that.
How did this city not learn its lesson from 2020? Was everyone still so afraid of COVID that they forgot the other dumb things that came out of that incredibly dumb year? The fact that New York City, and it's still not great, but it's gotten, maybe a little bit better from the 2020 days. The fact that they want to go backward, and the fact that they still think that defund the police is a viable concept, but not just defund the police. He wants to abolish ICE and prisons. Mm-hmm. He wants safe injection sites. He wants to legalize.
Base. Wow, that's so cool. Oh, my Lord.
Sex work. Mm-hmm. Okay. This guy, if you thought New York City looked like a third world country before or now, wait until someone like that gets on power. You're going to see what socialism looks like in real life. And maybe that would be, to Clay's point, an educational awakening, but it would kill one of America's greatest cities. We can't let it happen.
Help me out here, my aged and infirm memory. Where socialism worked again, exactly? Where was it a success?
Okay. What do you call China? I mean, I'd say Cuba too, in spite of the crippling sanctions. But what would you call China? Like, and it's not like Zohran wants to do a command economy, dude. Like, what do you mean? I wish he had that power. He doesn't. Okay. But what is really frustrating about this is, like, these guys point to countries that we have up, countries that we have punished, countries that we've destroyed, to say socialism doesn't work. Okay? Countries that we've never let given a moment of respite to engage in any sort of socialization initiatives. Meanwhile, there are other countries that we have allowed to socialize to a certain degree, social democracies like the ones in Western Europe, right? And it's not like Zohran is trying to say, like, oh, we have to do a workers' councils and, like, use the vanguard to militarily overthrow the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie to the dictatorship of the proletariat. He's literally trying to move marginally in the direction, with the limited amount of power that he has, towards countries like Denmark or Norway or Sweden, or even, I mean, I guess, like, even England before before Thatcherism. Like, that's it. That's all this guy's trying to do. And these guys are like, well, yeah, I mean, well, think about what has happened to socialist countries. Look at Venezuela. It's like, what is that? Is that a threat? Are you going to do a coup in New York? Is that what you're saying? Are you going to strangle the New York economy with the hopes that this kind of fervor doesn't, this kind of successful socialization initiatives don't actually take root in the hearts and minds of Americans broadly? It's crazy. Talking to a local farmer dude this morning about this, I brought up China as an example. He said, China won't last. Your grandkids won't know the work China as a country. What? They're on their way out. The brain rot is rampant. Yeah, I mean, of course. Random dumbasses are going to be like, yeah, China's any day now, it's going to get destroyed.
Oh, come on. Is it nowhere? Is that possible? And yet...
Could you explain why you like China to someone uneducated? All I've heard is an authoritarian state and scary, you know. I am not well read on the topic. Ooh, my favorite. I wish there was like one video that we could point to. Okay, I'm just going to say this. Even development, rapid urbanization, high-speed rail. What else? Yeah, I show speed videos. Command economy, punishing billionaires when they do shit. Even punishing party leadership when they do shit. Labubu's. Immense support for education initiatives. That's another good one. Almost universal home ownership. That's another good one. Everybody has a house. Think about that. Major steps in the direction of renewable energy. Cost of living is immensely affordable and kept in check by the government. Very little interest in a military war style intervention all around the globe. Virtually non-existent footprint in that regard. Technological superiority in numerous sectors over the last 15 years as a direct part of Xi Jinping's 15-year plan. I think they targeted like what, 20 sectors, and they reached sector leadership in like 12 of those 20. Yeah, lifting 800 million people from extreme poverty in the shortest amount of time in history. That's a good one. You know, none of this applies to Hong Kong. Why? What do you mean? Not enough time has passed to see what Hong Kong will look like. If you think China will like continue punishing Hong Kong or something for the crime of being under the protective banner of England, you know, that's ridiculous. For all their faults and failures, for all the repression that the Chinese government has engaged in, okay, for all the control mechanisms that they have, the one thing you can't say is that they don't work to make sure people's living standards are improved year over year to the best of their ability in a way where because they understand that this is the most effective way to stamp out dissent. And it has been an incredibly successful way to stamp out dissent. In Howard Beach today, I found the two Mamdani voters a couple. They both seem to imply that they thought he ran to Cuomo's right and he was an Italian American because he's from Astoria. That's a joke. I doubt that this is real. Him, Mamdani isn't Italian. He looks like my nephew. No, he's of Indian descent. His first name is Zohran. Him, I just figured his parents were hippies or something. I mean, my friend named his kid Jagger. Wait, didn't he say that? He did say that, right? He said Italy is the India of the West, of Europe. What did he say? What did he tell me? And he said India is the Italy. Oh my God, I just realized Mamdani does sound like it could be Italian, and he does look Italian as fuck. Oh my God. He said India is the Italy of Asia, and Italians are the Indians of the West. He said Indians are the Italians of Asia. What about the South China Sea, imperialism/militarism? Great question. Something that I've talked about already. There is a joint security cooperation with every single country in the South China Sea with the exception of one. That country is the Philippines. Do you know why the Philippines do not want to cooperate with China in the Joint Security Partnership in the South China Sea? I think you know why. I think we all know why. This is not colonialism or imperialism. You can say that as far as extraction of natural resources that are far too close to the coastline of other countries is certainly questionable, for sure. But if America engaged in imperialism of this sort, I would have much more limited critiques of American empire. Yes. Regretty Spaghetti is correct. It's because the Philippines are a former colony of and current vector of U.S. interests. China uses ballistic iron bars to attack free democracy ships of democracy trademarked in the South China Sea. Would you say that the reason the Chinese regime is so repressive is to counteract the constant attempts by the West to undermine them and draw up anti-government sentiment? Yes, of course. Do you think they would have more room for social progressivism if the West had friendly relations with them? Also, yes, of course. Especially considering that they have actually implemented social progressivism in spite of that kind of control. The points of critique against China are in its internal affairs, whether it be Tibet or whether it be Xinjiang. But even then, they do a great deal of development across the board in an effort to peaceably stamp out any sort of dissent. Yeah, the 9-dash line is not a demarcation for Chinese territorial water. The foreign minister clarified that in 2020, but no West media reported it. It doesn't even matter because the Chinese ambition in the South China Sea is not born out of the extraction of natural resources, even though there is some of that happening as well, as far as I understand. But it is born out of an interest in maintaining security at a time when obviously American capitalist forces, specifically Western forces, have encroached upon the entirety of China's backyard with the hopes of one day undermining Chinese hegemony. That is the ultimate prize. That is the ultimate goal. That is precisely what the American government is doing. And they actively talk about how they want to do this. So I don't know why people actually act as though that is not what's currently taking place. But once again, I'm not a Chinese national, no matter how hard I wish I was. And I am not in the business of defending any state, let alone the Chinese state. I am simply explaining to people what I like about the Chinese style of governance and what I think we should be implementing. When in fact, and this dovetails into my story that I wanted to talk about,